Morning, everyone. Want to welcome you to our program. If you have a Bible or Bible app, go ahead and get them out. Turn over to Psalm 11. We're going to spend some time in that psalm. We're going to study it. And the point is for us to study it now, and then later we will give you opportunity to be able to think about and meditate on it, be able to kind of just put it in your heart and really make it a part of who you are. I love these psalms. Psalms are really amazing, and I think they've been very helpful for me to go through and to think through, and gives us an insight into a man after God's own heart, especially David, but also some other psalmists as well. So Psalm 11 is primarily a psalm of David, so we will look at David's psalm here. Some people have titled this psalm, "What Can the Righteous Do?" I think that is really fitting. But some other people have entitled it "Panic and Stability," and I really like that because there are two different halves to this psalm. This is a psalm of contrast, a contrast between the wicked, who apparently is plotting to harm David, with the righteous, who are under God's watchful care. And so I think overall, this is about David's unwavering trust in God amid some bad advice to flee from danger. I like what Boyce, one of the commentators, said about the psalm. This psalm, he says that it's about faith's response to fear's counsel. And this is a sentence from it. He says, "The psalmist is in danger from the wicked, who are bending their bows and shooting at him, and either his friends or his enemies are advising him to take flight." And so when everything is about to crumble underneath David's feet, there's one place that he can find stability. And there's one place that we can find stability in which we can turn as well. David chooses to take refuge in God. And so the context of this psalm was David's flight from King Saul. This is a really tough time for David. Saul was continually trying to catch David and kill him. Have you ever had to flee from somebody that was trying to kill you? And David had some really close calls, times when it looked like Saul had him cornered, times when it looks like he had him spread. And we know that God was behind all of the deliverances. But from a human standpoint, could you imagine how stressful that must have been for David here? Like mentally, this must have been really strenuous. You have the king of Israel chasing you around all over the countryside, trying to kill you. You could imagine like the president of the United States putting a target on your back and saying, "We're going to get this guy." You might start to think, wait a minute, do I deserve this? Is it right for me to turn myself in? I think this is my guess as to when this has happened. I can't prove it all that well, but I think it very well fits the context of David's flight from Saul. And assumably, well, I think you'll notice that this is probably the time which David wrote this psalm. But look at the first line of this confident determination of David. Very first line, he says, "In the Lord I will put my trust," or "In the Lord I will take refuge." This is a defining statement of faith. This is the foundation of this psalm. The Lord is the place of stability. The Lord is his asylum. He is his security. And notice the emphasis. He didn't say, "I will put my trust in the Lord." He says, he says instead, or he didn't say, "I will take refuge in the Lord." He says, "In the Lord I take refuge. In the Lord I put my trust." The point of emphasis is the Lord. The Lord is the subject. And notice the very end, he says, "For the Lord is righteous." The Lord does what is right. This is why in the Lord David will put his trust and not in the bad advice of others. Before this psalm was ever written, I think David had made up his mind that he was going to put his trust in the Lord in situations like this. There's plenty of alternatives. There's a lot of places that people turn to try to find protection. And people do that. And they think that those things really protect them, but they don't. And so that's where we're at as we're looking at the psalm. Let's go ahead and read the first three verses together. Psalm 11, I'll read the first three and we'll talk about it. It says, "In the Lord I put my trust. How can you say to my soul, flee as the bird to your mountain? For look, the wicked bend their bow. They make ready their arrow on the string, that they may shoot secretly at the upright in heart. The foundations are destroyed. What can the righteous do?" And so he says, "In the Lord I put my trust," but how can you say otherwise? How can you say to my soul, "Flee as a bird to the mountain"? And think about it. This Is this not the temptation that we face? Like we think, well, God's way is not working. So, I got to seek my own way out, to flee to the mountain, do it yourself, do it your own way. Now, consider some times in the Bible where people gave bad advice to people to flee to their own mountain. Think about what Shemaiah told Nehemiah in Nehemiah 6. He says, let us meet together in the house of the Lord within the temple, and let us close the door of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. Indeed, at night they may come and kill you. And so he's like, you got to protect yourself. Let's go to the temple, close the doors. But Nehemiah wouldn't do that because it wasn't his place. Think about Job's wife in Job 2, verse 9. Remember what Job's wife said? She said, do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die. And Job put his trust in the Lord, even if he had tons of questions as to why all of this was happening to him. You remember what Satan told Jesus during the temptations in the wilderness in Matthew 4, verse 3? He says, if you are the Son of God, then command these stones to be turned to bread. Remember, he hadn't ate for 40 days. He says, hey, look, if you're hungry, use your power, fix your problem here, flee to the mountain. And think about it. What was he doing in the wilderness? Well, the Spirit drove him into the wilderness. And so why shouldn't he use his power to get himself some bread while he's hungry here? He needed to learn to trust in the Lord. That's what he was doing. He was trusting in the Lord. That's what he chose to do. Do you remember what advice Peter gave to Jesus in Matthew 16:22? It says, then Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. And he said, far be it from you, Lord. He had just told him that he was going to go suffer and die on the cross. He says, this shall not happen to you. You don't have to go to the crucifixion. It was like Satan whispering in his ear. You don't have to do this. And the truth is, the closer the friend, the harder it becomes for us to resist the temptation. And that's especially true when we want it, the temptation. We already want it. Jesus didn't want to have to go through the cross, but he knew he needed to. Could you imagine somebody telling Paul something like that? Like, maybe you shouldn't go to that city. Maybe you shouldn't preach so boldly. We've got to be careful, And there could be, good intended, close friends telling us not to do the right thing. But to do it our way instead of doing it the Lord's way, it's just not right. I remember somebody telling me that a man in a congregation lied to him. Come to find out, he had been told from the elders and the preacher not to tell the truth because there was going to be some really difficult consequences if he did. That's just not right. I'm assuming that these are some of David's closest friends, his counselors, even his mighty men. Maybe they're trying to tell him to go ahead and kill Saul, or to do something else his own way. And notice they didn't just tell him. It says they told him in his soul. They said it to his soul. That's his inner being. They're trying to change his mind. They're trying to undermine his confident determination and turning and trusting in the Lord. They just said, make like a bee, or make like a bird and fly to the mountain. And David's amazed that they could say that because they're not thinking in God like he is. And those are the difficult times. The difficult times are the times we need to turn to the Lord the most. But that's the decision we have to make every time. Either we make God our refuge or we turn to something else to try to find protection. It's always better to face turmoil with the Lord than without the Lord. Somebody said what's difficult with the Lord is worse without the Lord. It's hard enough going through things with the Lord, but without him, man, it's hard. It's so difficult. Look at verse 2. He says, for look, the wicked bend their bow. They make ready their arrow on the string that they may shoot secretly at the upright in heart. Remember, they told them to make like a bird and flee. Now his enemies are going to be shooting at the bird. So the bird that is fleeing to the mountains to take refuge and trying not to get shot, but the wicked are using the righteous as target practice here. Look at first part of verse 3 says, if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? There are times in our lives when it seems like the foundations feel like they're crumbling out from underneath us. Everything that is falling apart. Like there's chaos. There's nothing to rely upon. The righteous are being put down. The wicked are being exalted. Government, religious leaders, society, everybody's turning against the righteous. They're screaming tolerance while the only one thing that they're not tolerating is absolute truth. And think about the possibilities for our society. There's maybe a time when preaching becomes, hate speech. and there's a threat of prison time and a threat of physical harm. Look look at the last part of verse 3. It says they're asking, what can the righteous do? What they really need to be asking is, what can God do? They're not looking at the Lord. They're distracted with all the chaos and the confusion. They're kind of like Peter, who, when he stepped out of the boat, he was looking at all the winds and the waves and got completely distracted from the Lord and ends up sinking. There's always going to be one thing. There's always going to be one thing that the righteous should do, and that's turn to the Lord, trust in the Lord, serve the Lord. David has already answered this at the very beginning. To the Lord I will trust, or I will put my refuge. There's only one right thing that we can do. And really, they're only right in one sense, that we can't do anything, but the Lord can. He's in control. Okay, look at verses 4-7. Let's go ahead and read the last part of the psalm. He says, the Lord is his holy temple. The Lord's throne is in heaven. His eyes behold, his eyelids test the Son of Man. The Lord tests the righteous, but the wicked and the one who loves violence, his soul hates. Upon the wicked he will rain coals, fire and brimstone, and a burning wind shall be the portion of their cup. For the Lord is righteous. He loves the righteous. His countenance beholds the upright. And so, the answer to the problem is the stability of the Lord. He is in his temple. He is on the throne. With the Lord, there is stability and security. Before there were foundations crumbling, there was cries and chaos. All of this reminds me of Psalm 2. Remember? The nations plot in vain things. Kings of their self, they come together and they counsel against the Lord and his anointed. And what does the Lord do? The Lord breaks their bonds into pieces. He casts away their cords, and the Lord laughs at them. Where was the Lord? He's on the throne. God doesn't flinch at human rebellion. And David's friends, who were telling him to flee to the mountain here, they're looking to these earthly cries. They're looking, but David is looking up to God, and he's seeing his power and his stability. Notice it says his eyes behold, his eyelids test the Son of Man. He sees his eyes, but why his eyelids are testing the Son of Man? Well, because he's squinting. He's scrutinizing them. He's looking very closely, and he's checking out everything. And he's not just looking on the outside, but he's looking on the inside, their thoughts and their motives. The Lord knows that. Then it goes on to say, the Lord tests the righteous, but the wicked and the one who loves violence, his soul hates. There are a number of different ways that God tests us, but one of the ways is through trials. He tests our character and our faith, and how we respond or what we think in the middle of it. It really shows who we are. And so his soul hates the one who loves violence. It's like he's saying he hates them with his whole heart. If God hates them, then I don't need to fear them. Look what he goes on to say. He says, upon the wicked, he will rain coals, fire and brimstone and a burning wind shall be their portion, their cup. God's going to punish the wicked, and yet we're afraid of the wicked. We're worried about what they think. We try to save face with the wicked. Who cares what they think? What does God think about them? That's what really matters. Think about the day of judgment. Do you suppose they'd want to trade places with us? Absolutely. God will pour his cup of wrath on them. They would give anything, absolutely anything, to trade places with us. Look at the last verse again. He says, for the Lord is righteous. He loves righteousness. His countenance beholds the upright. Those are the ones he loves. His character determines his judgments. We're to be more concerned about being people who God loves than being people who everyone else, especially the wicked, but everyone else loves. That ought to be the one thing that motivates us in anything. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks about us. What it matters is what the Lord thinks about us. I hope that's helpful. Something for you to think about and meditate on as you go throughout the rest of your day. I appreciate your time today. Hope everybody has a great rest of their Thursday. It's been wonderful weather, and A little warm, but wonderful weather. And, another day that the Lord has given us. Just the fact that I woke up this morning and I had breath and I put clothes on my body. I ate and, all those wonderful blessings that I think about. And then when we get in difficult times, sometimes we trust God for all those things. But then difficult times, we struggle to trust because it seems like the foundations are crumbling out from underneath us. Let's look to God. Let's trust in Him. Let's continue to think about what David says here in this psalm. Appreciate your time today. Hope everybody has a great rest of their day. God bless everybody.